You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is the program called The Wonderful World of Wardini Books, and it's our pleasure, as always, to have in the studio Lou from Wardini Books in Havelock North. The wonderful Lou. How you going, Lou?
I'm wonderful.
You are wonderful indeed.
How are you doing, Ken?
Well, I'm doing great. All the better for seeing you.
Nice.
Yeah, and you've been away at a conference?
Yes, we went to Booksellers New Zealand conference up in Auckland, and it was great, yeah. So buzzing around with ideas.
Yeah, you're fizzing.
Watch this space.
Yes, big changes in the shop coming up.
Not changes, just more stuff.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Can never have enough good books.
No, that's it. And events and, ideas. Yeah.
How much more could you do them? And you guys are everywhere.
Yeah, we are, but we're a big staff now. There are 9 of us, so I think it's about delegating.
I saw on your Facebook page that you had about 40 kids in your shop at one stage.
45 yesterday.
45.
Yeah.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, so it was a class from Lucknow School in Havelock North, and they were the most delightful little children.
Do kids still like reading?
Yeah, they love it. I mean, if you look at that photo, practically every kid is fixated on the book that I'm reading to them, and that's quite incredible with that amount of kids. Yeah, so it was great.
I suppose it's good to be a wordsmith like you there, that you can tell a story much better than what, say, I could or most people could.
I like doing the voices,
yes.
And I'm quite mouthy and showy offy, so yeah.
I wasn't going to say that.
I can say it. I know what I'm like.
Anyway, we've got 3 more great books that you have reviewed for us, and one is called Two for Me, One for You. What's that all about?
That's Jörg Müller is the author. And I think just before we went on air, we were having a look, and I'm like, I think he's German. And it was originally written in German, and it's been translated by Catherine Chidgey, who is a New Zealand... I'm assuming it's the same Catherine Chidgey that is the New Zealand author that's won all sorts of awards and is very... But she obviously has good German translation skills too.
Yeah.
So this is a picture book for little children of... I think you've probably got to be about 2 or 3. You've got to have an idea of the concept of sharing, because what you've got here is 2 really good friends, and they clearly live together. It's Bear and Weasel.
Yes.
And on her way home, Bear has found 3 mushrooms, so she takes them home, and Weasel's obviously the cook of the household, and there she is, so she cooks them up. Weasel's very excited. Weasel's a boy. He wiped the mushrooms, seared them, seasoned them with plenty of salt and pepper, and let them simmer in the frying pan with a little parsley.
Yes.
And so Bear's waiting patiently. And there are 3 mushrooms. So 1 mushroom for you and 1 mushroom for me, Bear says as she dishes them up. And another mushroom for me, that's fair, I'm big so I need to eat a lot. Weasel takes exception to this, as you can only imagine, because she's little and she needs to grow, or he needs to grow. So he's like, well, no, I should have them. And there ensues a massive argument about the mushrooms. But my favourite part, actually, and it's all to do, this is the skill of a good writer, it's the punctuation. So Weasel is very cross. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. You brought them home to me, and I did all the work. I wiped the mushrooms and seared them and seasoned them and simmered them in the heavy pan with parsley. There's this full stop, and then with parsley. So you can get that real indignant. The parsley makes the difference. Anyway, so they have this massive scrap, and eventually what happens is it gets quite heated. Fox just comes in. There's his paw. And he comes in and he swipes the extra mushroom. And that's it. Argument over. And they're all ganging up on Fox, The cheek of it. Totally unfair. Can you believe it? So they're great mates again. Everything's fine. They scoff their delicious 1 mushroom each. And then Weasel brings out dessert. How many strawberries do you see?
Not 3 strawberries.
3 strawberries. So I just think that's brilliant. So it is about sharing and also about the differences of opinion. Because Bear thinks that she's totally in the right, and Weasel thinks he's totally in the right.
It's great how these books that you bring in do sort of seem to have a bit of a moral in them, don't they, these days? It's great.
And you can read it just because it's a fun story,
but
there's a little message in there.
It's good to have a message. And the next book's called The Land of Roar.
The Land of Roar. This is a chapter book for, I would say, about 9 and up. It's got some quite scary bits in it. So it's Arthur and Rose, and they are twins. They're 11 years old, and they've gone to stay with their granddad like they do quite a few summers. And he's a real fun character. He's a bit wheezy and old now. He's got they're always shouting, inhaler, at him when he gets a bit wheezy. But he's the granddad that stuffs about and jokes around and has a great deal of fun. But he can see that Arthur and Rose, who have always been really close, are growing apart. Rose seems to have got this girly girl thing going on, and she wants to be in with the in crowd, and she's always on her phone, and Arthur really misses her because they used to play together and they used to play imaginary games in the Land of Roar. And she denies that they ever did that. They find this old map in the attic, and they used to go through the old camp bed, and when they came out the other side, they'd be in the Land of Roar, and they'd made all these things up. And at one point, Rose had made up a horrible character of the things that Arthur is most scared of. So he's scared of scarecrows and he's scared of crows, the bird. And so she'd made up this scarecrow with button eyes and a stitched up mouth, and it had wings and it could fly, and they called it Croaky. And it's all imaginary. Or is it, Ken?
Or is it? Yes.
Because something happens, and maybe they do end up back in the land of Roar, and maybe there's something really awful and they've got to go and rescue somebody, but it all depends on their relationship and how much they believe. So it's really, really riveting, you know. But I went to bed and I was thinking about Croaky as I was drifting off to sleep, and I was like, he's a really powerful character. Yeah, we've all got something from our childhood that's a little bit scary.
It is amazing how a book can get inside your head, isn't it? Character.
But it's brilliant, you know.
Yeah, and adults equally would enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I think so, you know, especially if you're going to read it aloud to your kids. There's dragons, and there's a bunch of kids called the Lost Girls, which is a nice twist on the Lost Boys from Peter Pan, and all sorts going on. And they're mixed race kids too, so the granddad's originally from Mauritius, so they talk about that quite a bit too. And I think that's part of Rose trying to fit in, you know, because she wants to have the straight hair and all that kind of thing. So it's about being who you are and being true to yourself.
Out of 10, what would you rate that book?
Oh, it's a good 9.5 out of 10.
Wow.
It's
just
a
about
really,
as good as it
really
gets.
good book.
Excellent. And the last book we're going to look at is one called Tidelands.
This is a grown-up novel by Philippa Gregory, who is well known for her historic fiction, and it's normally to do with kings and queens, like Tudor queens and things like that. But this one is quite different. So it's England in 1648, and Tidelands is an island off the coast of somewhere in England. I think it's sort of down south somewhere. And they haven't got a map of Tidelands. This was the thing that I found really interesting, not because it's 1648, but because you can't do a map of Tidelands, because every time the tide comes in and out, it changes the landscape of the small island. So it's like silt flats, and they've got a sinkhole with a bubbling pot of water and all sorts of stuff going on. But what happens is, the woman, oh God, I'm terrible at names sometimes, aren't I? Eleanor, she's got 2 kids. Her husband is missing at sea, so she can't be declared a widow, but she's not got the income from her husband, who's a fisherman. She didn't like him much anyway, so she's hoping. It starts off with her going to the church. It's Midsummer's Eve, and if you go to the churchyard at midnight on Midsummer's Eve, you will see the spirit of the person who's passed over. But she doesn't see him, so she's thinking, oh, damn, he's not dead. But who she does see is this young man who's obviously trying to hide from something, and she helps him out, and he's actually a Catholic priest. Now, we're in 1648. He's in a lot of danger because King Charles is on the Isle of Wight. He's been exiled there, and you've got Oliver Cromwell fighting with the royalists, and he's trying to get to the king, so he's in a great deal of danger, and she hides him. And because of this, her family then gets special privileges on the island because there's a royalist lord of the manor that's trying to hide the Catholic bloke as well. But what eventually happens is there's this real connection between Eleanor and the priest, so there's a romance going on. But he's a Catholic priest. He's not supposed to be even having those thoughts, never mind anything else. So there's a lot of danger for them. There's a lot of danger for her daughter, who's growing up, and she's about 14, and she's very pretty, and there's a lot of jealousy around there. And I think what Eleanor's special skills are, she's kind of a herbalist. I think she's, there might be an accusation of witchcraft coming.
Yes, indeed. Now, you mentioned that it's a historical love story by the sound of it. Is it going to appeal to men and women alike, or mainly women might like this book?
I don't know. The history of it is really quite finely detailed. Philippa Gregory is an historian. She's not just making stuff up, so it will be historically accurate with the English Civil War. And but it is very heavy on the he's so beautiful, she's so beautiful sigh that, it's forbidden love. So some people love it, they lap it up, but some people will be like, can't be bothered. But she's a good writer.
Good on you, Lee. Before I let you get back to work, just remind our listeners, you've got 2 stores. Where are you?
We are 16 Tomato Road in Havelock North, and we can accommodate 45 children at a time, apparently. And we are 44 Hastings Street in Napier. And you've got a website, and you've got a Facebook page, and you've got Instagram. As always, our pleasure. And stuff. Podcast coming.
Podcast, really? I saw one of your podcasts the other day. That was great.
Oh, that's the YouTube channel.
Oh, is it a YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Awesome. You're everywhere.
We are.
See you later.
See ya.